Pipe Network presents.
On this episode of season 4, let's talk.
I remember I in high school I think the first year I think they let me join the beauty contest that they had every year. Yeah, so I didn't won the first prize. I won Miss Talent. So I won I won Miss Talent. And my preparations were well doing what I know. So I sang. I still remember the song, my goodness. I sang Everything I Do by Brian Adams, and I sang while playing the keyboard. So that got me the talent the talent award. What do you call it? Yeah, yeah. So okay. So it's like that. I'm
On behalf of my guest here in the Rajiv Show, we would like to wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Hey, folks, welcome to the Rajiv Show. And my guest today, oh my gosh, uh, is a friend, a legend, a mythology. There's so many things that I
what?
could describe my guest today on the Rajiv show. There's so many ways to describe her. So let me just simplify it. I'm just gonna go with a phenomenal, artistic, beautiful legend, Abby Clutario. Folks, you're gonna meet a legend in this conversation. I hope you're gonna have fun. Hi, Abby Clutario. How are you doing today?
Hello, Rajiv. Thank you. Finally, thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm sure this is gonna be fun.
Yeah.
We've been
As
talking offline with lots of stuff, and
yeah.
um, and you just pray that I don't remember to mention any of those things that you
Yes, I do.
mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah.
I'm a very good and keeper of secrets.
Much love, much love. Before we start this
All
episode, of
right.
course, I ask usually my guests, could you give a little bit of background aside from the brand, monstrous, phenomenal curtain entry call? Could you give a little bit of description about yourself to my listeners, of course?
Oh, me personal?
Yeah.
Well, I won't even try to lift myself up a lot, but okay. Well, how do I begin? Okay. Abby Clutario, I'm a musician. I'm a professional musician. I play with several groups. Okay. I have, of course, my main band is Fuseboxx. It's a progressive rock band. I have Human Folk with Johnny Allegre. It's a world fusion group. I'm also with Lenses. It's an indie pop jazz group. And finally, I'm with Manila Sky. We offer improvisation music that touches on world slash fusion slash ambient music, something like that. Okay, so those are my kind of like independent groups, as we may call it here in the Philippines or in Manila. But I also have my group for like events, and it's actually my bread and butter, my paying my
Yeah.
paying group. It's called
Yeah.
Anima Choir and Strings. But because of with the pandemic going on, we were just trying to um, go back to the scene one step at a time. So we're just recuperating from a year of not being on live gigs there, so stuff like that. So okay, so I am a keyboardist. Okay, I play the piano. That's really my first instrument to begin with when I started with music, and then I shifted to, well, not actually shifted, but I also learned a bit of guitar, and right now I play the Chapman stick. So yeah, that's a pretty cool instrument that you should research about.
Yeah,
But if you want to ask me about it, I'm sure you're gonna learn a lot of what the Chapman stick is,
yeah,
all about. So I play that instrument too, and of course, yeah, I sing because I started also being exposed to music in the church. So I was a member of the kiddie choir, something like that. So
yeah,
there. So I guess that's about it.
yeah.
But of course,
Amazing,
yeah. So there. Ask away.
amazing, amazing. So you've opened up a lot of Pandora's box. Your band's Fuseboxx, Human Folk, Piano, and
Hmm.
Chapman Stick. Before we open these Pandora's box, of course, let's take it back a bit. If you and I were
Sure.
classmates in high school, who were you in high school? Are you
Ah.
the 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 library introverted library girl, or the girl who has a lot of guys around? Who were you
Okay,
if you
okay.
and
A
I were
bit of
classmates? Yeah.
Okay, so all right, a bit of backgrounder. So when I had a different school when I was in elementary and when I was in high school. So because we moved we moved houses back then. So when I was in high school, I was a transferee. Um, so maybe if we were classmates back then, well, well, I'm not actually an introvert, but I couldn't say I was extrovert too. But I had my own set of friends, and what else? I could be friendly. I was part of the student council back then.
Oh wow.
I graduated valedictorian, so
Wow.
but yeah, so um there, well, pretty much it. So a lot of classmates would you know didn't mind being friends with me, but for sure I was somebody that that wasn't really like, nobody would really like try to pursue. Is that even the word? Because teenagers.
Yeah, yeah,
But no. Nonetheless, I'm 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 kind of in the middle in terms of being introvert or extrovert. I'm kind of like in the middle.
the
So
ambivert.
sometimes, yeah.
Yeah,
What?
interesting.
What?
Ambivert,
How do you call it?
ambivert, ambivert.
Ambivert.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, probably because sometimes there are times that I like to. I think it's innate in me to teach some stuff that I know or share stuff that I know,
yeah,
but at the same time, when it comes to um there are times that you just like to be quiet and don't want to talk to anybody. So I could
yeah,
be that too. There are times like when you go to field trips back then, like you're in a
yeah,
bus, right? So
yeah,
sometimes it's nice to talk to people, but sometimes you just have to have your quiet time with
yeah.
yourself and all of that. So i I can immerse myself into that situation as well. So there.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. You mentioned valedictorian, so I have a feeling leadership is a part of growing up. It had that influence, and somehow it spilled through also in music. That you said valedictorian.
Yeah.
I'm so proud.
Uh,
I'm so proud of that achievement. That's a big achievement, if I might say so myself. And
thank you.
and in the high school setup, when thing did what was your did do you have certain philosophies that reminded you on end goals and objectives that you were achieving? by the way, if I might ask so myself.
Okay. Well, in terms of where if we're talking about dreams and goals,
Yeah,
if you want to like dwell into that, yeah. Well, way back in elementary, my real goal in life was the answer if anyone would ask me what you want to be when you grow up.
yeah,
Well, I would always say a teacher. Okay, so I would always say I want to be a teacher. Siguro I got really influenced with my grandmother because
yeah,
my grandmom, oh, so diba I mentioned in my elementary days we lived in different houses. We lived with my parents and grandparents. So my lola was the one who taught us uh, uh, her grandkids the piano.
yeah,
So we had a piano in our place then, and she taught me then. And on weekdays, she had a preschool, a daycare center set up in the house.
yeah,
So I would see her teach, and she would teach us,
yeah,
not just music, but academically. So, alphabet, everything that you should learn in daycare. So
yeah,
so
yeah,
in my mind, I kind of like I had I had kinder maybe twice, grade one maybe twice because she was often there, and every so often when I got older, I joined the smaller kids and taught them and assisted her in some of the lessons. And
oh,
when she taught piano lessons, I assisted her too because she was falling asleep. She was quite old back then. So
yeah, yeah,
so when she had piano lessons at home with our neighbors and such, and sometimes she'd fall asleep and I would catch up with the lesson, and okay, oh, here's how you read it. So I teach
oh,
I teach her
that's
students.
interesting. That's
Yeah, so
interesting.
eventually I kind of got hooked to that notion of, oh, I can do this. I can teach music, I can teach somebody to sing. It carried over to high school, with, of course, you wanted to explore on your other, extracurricular activities. So
Yeah,
I was in a school choir too, and what do you call that? Glee club. So I was with a glee club, and I was quite advanced back then because I was reading notes,
yeah,
and most of the glee club members wouldn't have any idea of how to read notes. So I had that advantage, and I used it to teach them how to read the notes and teach the voices and the melody and harmony, so something like that. So
wow.
okay, so then back then what I wanted to be was not actually a music teacher, but basically any kind of teacher. I wasn't really decided what kind of teacher, but I did love
Huh.
math. So in my head, maybe I could be a math teacher or something.
Wow.
So something like that. So basta teachers,
Yeah,
so come what do you call that, the entrance exams for
yeah,
college.
yeah,
Of course, that was my first choice. BS education or something like that, a major in math or something.
yeah.
And when I had my exams in UP,
Huh.
BS music was my second choice. So
Interesting.
there, so that yeah, so that's the backstory of that. And you mentioned about the leadership skills. Well,
Yeah.
siguro maybe because I'm the eldest in the family, so maybe
Huh.
that that affected the totality of it. I'm the only girl
Oh. Oh.
with four boys, so I guess that kind of had an impact also on leadership skills in terms of I can handle I can handle the vigor and the kakulitan ng mga boys.
Interesting.
so so
Interesting.
yeah, so in a way I kind of had more inkling to, or more of an exchange of conversation, or I could relate to guys more than girls in that sense back then.
That makes
So
sense
yeah,
now.
I would
Okay.
have. Mm, yeah. There. So is that
It,
enough of of an
yeah.
answer to
Yeah,
your
it
question?
was
How about now?
phenomenal. It's phenomenal. There's so many things that I would love to unwrap from the questions. But first,
Mm-hmm.
continuing into the conversation of leadership, are you a competitive type? If you and I were to go up against, you said music was your whole thing. You grew up in the
Yeah.
background and stuff like that, and I'm sure you've also
Mm-hmm.
participated in music uh,
Yeah.
shows and stuff like that.
Yep.
So
Yep.
before you get into a competitive state, do you have some certain are you that competitive, like very competitive, like people leave me alone, and you get into a state and then you perform, or
Oh,
what is your mindset when you perform and
okay.
when you get into the stage every
Okay. Yeah, all right. So, yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I got into competitions, uh, both high school and elementary. But okay. So, well, usually it's more of the teachers asking me to join. So, I guess that's the level of competitiveness that's the level of competitiveness that I have. So if they ask me and I think I can do it, I would oblige. um in terms of the feelings, the emotions that come with it, I would surely do my best. I would, for example, if it was, what do you call it, if it was, I remember joining some what do you call that? Quiz bees,
yeah
like a math contest, or a any academic contest. So you have to study for it, and sometimes the teachers would help you. So I do attend those. I wouldn't just no, I can do this on my own. I'm not that. So if they offer that they have reviews, or I would definitely go, because I know that it's a different experience for me. So I grabbed every opportunity that I can. In terms of the extracurricular, of course, the singing contest.
yeah yeah
uh, Sometimes I remember, I in high school, I think, well, the first year, I think they let me join the beauty contest that they had
really
every year. Yeah, so I didn't won the first prize. I won Miss Talent. So
wow
I won I won Miss Talent. And my preparations were, well, doing what I know. So I sang. I still remember the song. My goodness, I sang "Everything I Do" by Brian Adams, and I sang while playing the keyboard. So that got me the
wow
talent. The talent award.
wow
What do you call it? Yeah. So okay, so it's like that. I go with the flow. Of course, I do get nervous a lot. But the initial feeling for me is that I get nervous, I get, goosebumps and all of that. But when once I hit the stage with
yeah
this thing, still gets to me, even now, especially with really really special gigs, special shows that you're on spotlight and everybody's looking at you, that kind of thing. So
yeah
it still gets to me, the first part of the performance, the waiting time, the preparations going for it, that's the highest tension that I
yeah
get, in a way.
yeah
But once I hit the first note, or the first chord, or whatever, then I go with the flow. So
interesting
and yeah, so in the end, well, if it's a competition, of course I would still, there are still hesitations. Would I win? It's okay if you don't win.
some thoughts.
Every
Okay,
other
interesting.
typical, yeah, every other typical feelings or thoughts that you would feel when you're there. But if it's like now, if it's just a regular performance, I really don't mind getting criticisms, or because that's the exchange now, right? So
Yeah,
in
yeah,
a competition, you get to lose or you win. Either you lose or you win.
yeah,
But in a performance, either it's either you did a great job, they'll cheer for you. You didn't get a good job, they won't cheer for you, or something like that. So that's the equivalent of that, I suppose. And I guess, some things get to me. Some, you still think of how can I make this better next time, something like that.
yeah.
So yeah, not, I can say that I don't know, how do you suppose I was, if when I describe it to you, am I competitive?
Yeah. I mean, the way I see it, the way I see it from the storytelling, from the narrative that you've shared with me, is that uh, y- you have that. The only thing is, the question there though that I asked is that, do you go to a mental trance where you, when you before, when you mentioned that you get nervous, I think that's the normality of it. But do you have
Mm-hmm.
like this sort
Yep.
of like this thing? Because if I may share some of my experiences here also, I used to,
Okay.
in high school, I used to perform Michael Jackson, and even from time to time I listened to Michael Jackson. I was actually the Michael Jackson in India.
Nah.
Many people know me as the Michael
Cool.
Jackson in India, and before I get on stage, I still do remember this as though it was yesterday. It's like I get into a state where uh, I allow myself. I go to a certain room, an empty room, where I just clear my
Uh-huh.
thoughts, and then
Uh-huh.
once my name is being called, I go in, and it's like it's I just dance my heart out, and people reciprocate it by sharing love, and then they till until the next day they say, hey, you did a good job. And that's how I that's my mental state when I perform. And yeah, that's
Right.
but for you, I guess the normalities, it's the normal stuff, the regular humans, humanistic instinct. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Not at all special for me. I'm not special. No, I'm
No,
kidding. Of
what
course,
made you
we're all special,
special? Yeah, what made you special is what caught my eye was, you mentioned maths, and you mentioned, you studied and thought that you wanted to teach maths and music. There's one thing that caught my eye when conversating, when you mentioned maths and music. I was reminded of this conversation that I had with Robert Dimbleby, my 50th guest, who happened to be also interested in maths for some reason, and also loves jazz and loves music. And it really feels like I'm having a relapse of memory when it comes to comes to the conversations that I've had, and it's really amazing. This is really interesting. And I really wanna. I'm actually curious to ask, what draw you to maths first, before I ask what draw you to
Oh,
music first.
so in the beginning, of course, when you were learning, when you're studying, um, when math was introduced, because it's an everyday thing,
Yeah,
counting numbers, counting stuff, and when it came to the concepts, I was just able to understand it, quite easily. I was
yeah,
able to understand how it was organized, how there's a system for stuff like that. And in a way, I think math and music go hand in hand
huh,
when you're learning both.
yeah,
Um, because believe it or not, when I fast forward, when I got into college, some of my music classmates would tell me I went into music because I didn't want to study math. And I was like, really? I couldn't I couldn't understand why, because math and is music and music is math
yeah,
in my point of view, because once you're learning music, you learn rhythm, and
yeah.
rhythm is patterns, and patterns is math.
Interesting.
So time signatures is math. counting time is math. So I couldn't, I couldn't understand why you wouldn't love math and you will love music and vice versa. So
That's interesting.
so
That's an interesting
yeah, so to answer
perspective.
your question, I really like both because they intertwine with all the concepts and the beauty of the system that it has. So that's the thing of both math and music. For me, it's both cerebral and creative, artistic in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah. So there.
it's kind of the blend between the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere according to psychology. Kind of
Right. It's
interesting.
the one that kind of that's why music is kind of like the bridge
Yeah,
for both the left and the right brain. I do believe in that because until now, when I teach music, I can tell you so many concepts of music, but then you would also learn so many concepts in different fields of learning.
yeah,
So for sure you're gonna be able to practice your reading skills. You'll be practicing your listening skills,
yeah,
uh your emotions. It will draw your emotions, your creativity. It will draw you to thinking, to
yeah,
analyzing the forms and stuff like that. So many things to talk about
yeah,
in
yeah,
music. And and if you were a kid, and if I can imagine that if you were a kid that can absorb that kind of knowledge in one go, then truly learning music in such a young age would really benefit you in the long run. you know Even if you don't pursue it as a career,
yeah.
but having just a background of it, it will truly relate to whatever field you're going to pursue in the future. That's practically what I believe in. So there.
Interesting. You said the word believe. I was about to ask you about philosophy, but you've answered one question and the second question that I had in mind. That just blew my mind. Because I was gonna transition into philosophy, and I'm a very deep thinker myself, so I really love diving into the mindsets of people when that's why I asked you, like, what was your mindset when you are about to perform, like what is going through your mind before the show,
Yeah.
because I've interviewed sports people as well. In this series so far, I remember I've interviewed a baseball player who had this
Uh-huh.
amazing story about him being in baseball and being inspired by baseball, and then but when he gets into the game, he gets into a mental state that before the game it's okay to be friends, but then when it's game time, I'm gonna kill you. You're not my friend anymore. It's like that Michael
Oh
Jordan,
no.
because
Yeah,
it's competitive
yeah, that's right.
sports. That's how. And
Yeah.
I thought you had the same mindset, but I guess you're more sweeter in that at that sense, that it's
Yeah.
about to go down, but
No.
yeah. you know
Well, in a way, yeah, no. It's kind of like this. Maybe because, well, I had some exposure to sports, and I know how competitive sports can be. Physically and
yeah,
emotionally, mentally, it has a different mindset in a way.
yeah,
And I was exposed to that, but I'm not. Oh, as you can say, I'm not a very athletic person. I do enjoy, having some routine on the side.
yeah,
If I had the time, I'll do some yoga, but that doesn't even explore into competition, so never mind. So, but for
yeah,
example, I like to play table tennis or badminton, or stuff like that. So even if I'm in a game or in a match, it's
yeah,
always like just like a friendly game for me.
yeah,
And the mindset is always I hope I win, but not I'm gonna kill you.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Nothing like
Not the killer mindset. Yeah.
that. Not kill mode. Yes, yes.
That's
Um,
interesting. Yeah. You
so
mentioned
so there.
yeah. You mentioned in high school also you joined pageantry. Of course, Philippines is known for its pageantry nowadays with the winning of Pia back in I think Catriona Gray. Uh
Uh-huh,
it
uh-huh.
took me back also to a memory of mine that I think I've shared or I haven't shared yet in my show is that
Tell me
I
about it again, and then I'll remind you. I'll tell you
yeah
if you told me already.
yeah because I remember there was this thing I was also placed under the same situation being in pageant on my first
Uh-huh.
year in college. This
Okay.
was when I was still I'm fresh from Philippines. I'm fresh from India. I arrived from India. It was
Uh-huh.
2015, and I was young as a buck when I went to college. So anything that anyone was saying,
Uh-huh.
I was saying yes to it. They wanted me student body. I just said yes to it. I didn't even know what student body was, and then it went to the point that someone referred me to compete in this pageantry of UB University of Baguio's pageant. So I represented music at that time, and
Okay.
I remember I remember the scenario as though again, like I say, as though it was yesterday that. When I was in the pageant show, the pre-pageant, I didn't really compete as I was not really I didn't know anything. Like I said earlier, I did not know anything about this whole thing. They just said play, perform, do your talent, do whatever it is. Okay, I just did my
Yeah.
thing, and I was just being me. I was just being genuine. And at the end of the at the end of the whole competition, I still, even till today, I still do not know how I managed to get a second runner up, which is kind of weird, you know. Uh, and I think,
Why is it
yeah,
weird, Rajiv? Tell
yeah,
me.
because during the day, I'll tell you what happened during that day of the competition. Unfortunately, my partner, Miss Music, didn't show up, so I was the only guy in stage. Imagine this. I was the only person in stage without a partner, and everybody had their own partners. And that was one. That was one
Oh,
element that was mentally stressing me out. And then I was intimidated with
oh.
everybody that I was competing against because they had the ring light, they had the makeup guys, they had the this and that, they had everything. All I
Everything.
had
The
was
works. Yeah, the
yeah.
works.
The funny thing about me was, like I said yes to everything. And at that time, our music society was new, was introduced new, so they didn't have really a budget. They didn't have any of that stuff, and I think they were still learning to figure out who is their leader and then all that stuff. So I remember my leader was just there. We had luckily the gymnasium of UB was behind the music school, music classrooms, so we had an opportunity to own one of the rooms. And then I remember it was just me and my leader who just put powder on my face. I just tied my hair, just went and just became my authentic. And I think I won best in sports because I was because the whole pattern of walking around, I had to play the part. So I was carrying a football. I couldn't like just carry the football. I just said, okay, let me just kick this around when, and then I was so surprised. To my recollection, I was so surprised standing there alone. And then when they said second runner up, I was like, "What? Wait, you must have
What
Steve Harvey me or something."
happened?
Because I was just looking around. It's like me really. I was just pointing at myself, and yeah, it was also awkward during that time because I remember when we were standing, and there was this serenade. There was this singer who wanted to serenade the ladies and just to put on a show, just to put the whole pageantry and to sing. I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah. Yeah.
standing looking at the spotlight, and right in front of the spotlight there were a lot of guys pointing, give the rose to Rajiv. Number seven, because I was the seventh competitor, so saying number seven,
Mhm.
number seven. And then I could see this guy, he's not coming towards me. I was like, you come here, we're gonna have scrap. And luckily he did, because there was no, I didn't have a partner. So it
Yeah.
was
That's so
it was a
awkward.
crazy night. It was really one of those nights where I had majority of the negatives towards me, but I won something in return. And I think
Right.
till date, I
Right.
think I was
Right.
the only one who competed as Mr. Music, who still has a second runner up, which still amazes me. And yeah.
Mhm.
And
Nice.
that's why I connected with me when you said pageantry. I said, oh yeah, that reminded me of my my story that I haven't shared, which I don't remember if I shared it, but I think I shared it. This is
Yeah.
the first time sharing it on my show. So yeah.
There are a lot of, yeah, there are a lot of experiences with the same, with the same emotions,
Yeah,
coming at you.
yeah,
You perform your best, but still with the different circumstances, you're thinking, will I
yeah,
win? No, I don't think I'm gonna
yeah,
win at all, because of
yeah,
this and that, because of this and that. So you don't expect it, but um some people see something there. So
yeah,
I just, when we won, when Fuseboxx won Music Laban in 2003, that
yeah,
was, really, really, that was also really unexpected. um because one, when we when we uh when we got to the contest, our drummer back then was the
yeah,
one who pitched, who applied, what do you call that, yeah, who joined. He just, submitted the what do you call, bottle caps for
yeah, yeah,
to be able, yeah, because that's how it went before. You have to submit this amount of bottle caps to join this, blah blah blah, this contest. And he did that because that time the band was, not going anywhere. We just had, I have school, some of them have jobs, focus on some other things, and this is just like a hobby or something like that. So,
yeah,
and we were doing our kind of thing back then, our own music, and we didn't know what it was called. We didn't label it with anything, but we just played what we liked. So didn't really expect the thing, but we won, for some weird reason. The judges, who would normally pick somebody more rock than my voice, and
yeah,
would probably pick a male fronted band, because Red Horse is a male brand.
yeah,
You can always say that. So that was like the feat that we, that was running over our heads. Well, if they like us, they like us, I think. So, and then we won. And then years later, we heard some stories that, you weren't really supposed to win, but you were really good, and blah blah blah. Well, that
oh
lifted our
really?
spirits up more. So
Interesting.
yeah, because the judges back then, we didn't know. Well, we knew them by name, but we didn't really know them. Like, we haven't been introduced to any of the judges, any of them. We just got to meet them, and exchange stories, maybe after a few years after Music Laban. So that was really, a memorable experience for us too, both
Interesting.
positive and negative.
Interesting. uh that fascinating. It's powerful. uh I just realized that you and I lived a parallel life, but with similar storytelling, and it fascinates me. From high school, although prodigy, calling you a prodigy is probably was something that I should have said in the introduction of this
I don't think
conversation.
okay, talking about prodigy-ness.
Yes.
Uh, okay, well, if I would classify myself as that, I cannot, because I've always asked also that question, and my bandmates and I, they would tease me, oh, prodigy ka kasi or something like that. But
Yeah.
you know, I'm looking back at people who were really called prodigies, like Jordan Rudess and um, who else? The promo
Mozart.
kids that we had, yeah, and then Mozart. I don't think I had that. Well, I had that. What do you call that? The resources
Yeah.
to pull that off. Maybe if like if I went to music school way back when I was really really small and developed this craft of really playing
Yeah.
fast classical piano pieces or something like that, maybe I would be able to get to that prodigy stage,
Yeah.
because it, I think being called as such really has something to do with, of course, genes,
Yeah.
but most of all, it's how
Discipline.
the kid or the child is disciplined, and how he or she absorbs all these learnings that was he or she was exposed to. And I don't, I'm not regretting of not being a prodigy. In fact, I'm okay of not being one,
Yeah.
because it has a different impact. I think it will have a different impact in my life if I was labeled uh, like that when I was young. So in a way, I'm glad I'm not that. I'm not in that level. uh, because if I were a prodigy,
Yeah.
I would have aced all my tests or something like that. But I think, yeah, but I know I'm not. So
Yeah. Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. I want to talk about hard work, discipline, and work ethic that you have. But before we talk about
Oh,
those,
okay, okay,
I wanna also
okay,
uncover Fuseboxx and Human Folk and all the other projects. Before we
okay.
get into those topics, folks, we will be
Great,
right
go
back.
right ahead, go right ahead.
We'll be right back after these few short messages. Do you want to get great deals? Go to Pipe Marketplace. Visit pipenetwork.co/marketplace and use the promo code TRS to get exclusive discounts. Chat with them now. Basta Podcast, Pipe yan.
Catch the Pizarra Tales weekly as we tackle issues about education and share experiences about teaching. Hosted by James Australia, available on your favorite podcast platforms.
Hey folks, welcome back. And since it's Christmas season, I almost forgot that this recording was also going to be released on a Christmas season. We've I've got a sweet tooth, and my treat today is a conversation with the legendary Abby Clutario. And earlier on in the first half of our conversation, we were talking about high school. We were talking about parallel lives and the creativity of music, and of course high school experiences and college experiences. So during the break, we were having a conversation with my guest, legendary Abby Clutario, and about Mozart. Wasn't that about Mozart?
Was it? Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was
Yeah,
about Mozart.
yeah, yeah. Please do share. Please do share before we talk about the rest that we're covering.
Okay, can you repeat the quote again, because I cannot say it in my own words. It's better if you say it.
Yeah. Folks, for those who are tuning in, of course, there is also an introductionary blog. For those who have reached this portion, there's an introductory blog that I wrote in dedication to my guest, and in the beginning of that is a quote by the famous Mozart. The the music is not in the notes, but in the silence in between, and it's just a powerful line. I mean, do you agree with me?
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And I keep on still learning about that concept even now. Of course, when you first read music, there are notes and there are rests, right?
Yeah,
And for somebody who would start out with music, rests are like, just pauses.
yeah,
There's nothing to do. But early on, you realize that you still have to count it in your head, right?
yeah,
So that evolves into, um, when you're playing it by on your own already and making improvisations.
yeah,
Okay, so when you start um, expressing your music without a music sheet,
yeah.
that I think is more transcendental. Oh my god, the word
Wow.
transcendental in a way. Yeah, you transcend whatever you feel and you try to transfer it in on your instrument,
Yeah,
and whether it be a real instrument or your voice, either or,
yeah,
and that transcends to what the audience would feel. So
yeah,
for me, having the notes and the rest is always, I always see that music is like a conversation. Okay,
interesting.
and the conversation involves, taking turns of the conversation. You have a listener, you have a speaker. When
Yeah,
you speak, the other listens, but you cannot listen when you're also speaking, right?
yeah,
So there's a back and forth of that flow of energy.
interesting.
And also, so that's one thing one way of looking at it. And there's a memorable experience I had with this great Filipino sitar player,
Hmm.
si Sir Joey Valenciano. He died a few years back when I was actually, I think we formed Manila Sky, or we were beginning to form Manila Sky back then when I met him.
Yeah,
And one of the things he said, short backstory is that, so my bandmate in Manila Sky, CJ Wasu, was his bandmate before. So they played together. He CJ Wasu plays the Indian tabla, and Sir Joey Valenciano would play the sitar, and they
yeah,
have a weekly uh, gig at Bollywood, the restaurant
yeah,
in Manila, in
yeah,
Makati. So I was privileged to join them in one of their jams, and it was all improvisation. And CJ said, "Yeah, come on, bring your stick. It'll be fun like that." And then the funny thing was, it was the first time that I met Sir Joey, and he didn't, he was not a casual smiler like I am.
yeah,
There was not a smile on his face when I met him. So you would know how that, impact me. And he's totally, the quiet type. We wouldn't smile, but we played music. And later on, I warmed up to him, and he was really, a very, very good mentor. I only got to experience very intimate talks with him only for a couple of years, I think, before he passed away. But some of, well, most of his questions were like, it's not to daunt you, it's really to educate himself, really, of how you think as a musician. So he goes to me and asks,
hmm,
um do you always need to play the bass? He said, he told me that you always need to play the bass, because in the Chapman stick I was learning both sides of the music. I play the bass and I can play the melody, right?
yeah,
So, and I said, uh, well, I don't really need to. And then I thought, oh, maybe I was really doing it like that, because playing the bass gives you a fundamental of the whole idea of the music.
yeah,
But sometimes sometimes being silent in that part gives a whole different color as well. So
Yeah.
this might, sorry, I'm talking a little bit technically here, but allow me to splurge you with some technical
Sure,
thoughts in
sure.
music. But so
Yeah.
anyway, so that was like a reminder for me of how you should be able to convey your message. So you don't really have to talk too much. You sometimes you can just listen, so
Yeah.
with that note that he left me, with that question, I was, I thought to myself, okay, it's okay not to play the bass. So all right. So there are times also when we try to have our improvisation. Sometimes you don't know how to end your solo, even if it's just a common
Yeah.
uh a song that you have an ad lib somewhere,
Yeah.
and sometimes it gets you to a point that you're talking and talking and talking. Okay, wait, how do I stop this?
It makes sense.
And so
Makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it for me, whatever you do in music, especially if you're creating, okay, I believe that also reflects how you are as a human being when you talk to people. So if you're somebody who talks a lot, sometimes you can hear it in the music. And if you're somebody who wants to overpower somebody with topics or whatever, you can hear that also in his music. My observation from my own observation from my own experiences for the last blank years of playing.
Wow.
So it's really interesting how music without words can convey those meanings in life too. So there. I hope I answered
Wow.
your question. Was there a
Yeah.
question?
Yeah.
We were
I
just talking,
mean,
right?
yeah. I love how the storytelling you mentioned about Sir I forgot
Toby.
yeah. And I love how I felt like I was there in that story where I was very visualizing you, because for me, I'm an artist, so everything that I do
Mm.
is in terms of visualization when it comes to objectives, it comes to goals and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
I get it. I get that.
So I felt like I was there in that story. That's why I was really awed and inspired by your learning and your capability of adapting and learning. And yeah, it's true. I do agree that when you talk too much, yeah. And now I coming to think of it, some musicians want to learn how to slap the bass. I want to learn how to play the tapping and all that stuff, but they just realize
Mhm.
that those are just the tools and techniques.
Yeah.
But in order to say, you have to use the instrument to
Mhm.
say something. You can slap paradiddle anytime, as much as you want, but if it makes no sense, it makes no sense to
Yeah,
anyone. And the notes in between, it's very,
agree.
very powerful. It's very powerful how you took me to that transcending storytelling that you've mentioned, and it's powerful.
Well,
And
he was really one of the few people, or one of the few teachers that uh, I learned from, that really got to me. The few months or years that we've spent, because when I was in music, I didn't really personally meet him back then. When I was studying music, it was only after, when I was already performing, that I got to know him as a teacher. He was sharing his own stories, and um those kinds of experience you don't experience that when you're in school. As
yeah,
they say, you
yeah,
you you, you do learn a lot in school, but the experience is the one that really takes you there.
yeah,
You can only go back and relearn it once you realized it, diba, in
yeah,
real life. So yeah, it's like something. It's something like when I was having some voice lessons when I was in college.
Yeah.
So my teacher gets, so my teacher gets really technical and visual in a sense, but she explains to you something that you cannot see, because when you're singing, it's part of your body. So she can only describe, she
Yeah.
can only make some creative terms for, for you to imagine it, of
Yeah.
how you feel it. And back then, oh my god, I can't really understand a thing. I mean, I can't even, try to copy. I'm just, trying to,
Or
is this
emulate.
it, is this,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and it, and you know a few years after that, the lessons and all the performances, sometimes it will just click, because
Yeah.
you yourself, you found yourself discovering this technique, and
Yeah.
you say, oh, that's what she meant by this. You go like
Yeah.
that. So,
Interesting.
there are a lot of, there are a lot of things, even not in music, no, even in the academic ones. Sometimes you go back to, when you're there, you don't understand a thing, but
Yeah.
if you're welcome to the concept, you just absorb it. So it's just like in your memory banks or something like that. And
Yeah.
someday soon, when the right time comes, it just clicks, the concept comes back to you, and for some weird reason, it ties up with all the other memories that you have, and then
Yeah.
you get it. And then, and that and saying that, means that it really is a valuable moment when somebody older talks to you, because they
Yeah.
really know more stuff, diba? I'm
Yeah.
sure kids now have a lot of stuff to learn.
Yeah.
Talagang the kids nowadays really are really advanced because of the resources and the internet and all of that.
True.
But
True.
still, there are things that are, yet to be experienced,
Yeah.
right? So it's not just in the books, not in just in the classroom. It's really your own discovery. So
Yeah.
uh yeah, so being a kid is the most magnificent, part of learning. Is really so much fun if you get yourself involved in so many
Yeah.
things, or
Yeah.
if you're exposed in so many things,
I
right?
have I have 3 points that I've already shot in my head. It's just funny. I had 3 points that are parallel to the conversation, to the earlier you've mentioned about learning and education. The first point that I wanted to point out was, of course, in Igorot. I also, a conversation with a friend of mine, Nick Sator, who happens to be also in Igorot, he said that, in our conversation, that uh, education, for an Igorot, especially those that live in the mountains, is that
Uh-huh.
education is not only in not it's not only left inside the classroom, it's also taken outside. So, farming, agriculture, and all that stuff.
Right.
The reason why many of my parents, my mom, and they're more disciplined in cooking and all the stuff, because the education of the discipline on how they were back then made them who they are now. And yeah, that is the
I
first
agree. I
point.
agree.
And then, the second point was this parallel with my experience also with the music college, is that I this one I wanted to share with you. This one, um
Okay.
when I discovered walking, using my legs, is funny. That's when
Mhm.
I started
Uh-huh.
reflecting. And oftentimes, here in Baguio, especially, uh, from where I stay, it's very very far. So sometimes I can tolerate getting a jeep. Sometimes I cannot. So, during my college times, I used to uh, I used to walk from UB to Sing, at night, sometimes alone, sometimes with my mentor. And certain times of uh, the the traveling while I'm walking and I'm on my on my way home. I don't know why that happened. While I'm on my way home, sometimes the stuff that I learned only clicked. I don't know if it
Yeah.
makes sense. Only clicked when I was walking, and it's funny looking back at all the stuff that I've been learning, like about
Mm.
counterpoint, about forms and analysis, especially those types of subjects. I only understood them when I was walking back home, right after the end of the class, right after that subject was done. Or sometimes even during the holidays, like we have a sem break and all that stuff. I I only learn it during the sem break rather than I learn it and I do not know. It just kicks me. It's like I don't know if you have that moment. You're just sitting down, staring, glazing at the sun or glazing at the dog or animal or something, or you're playing with, and then suddenly you start talking about, oh, that's how counterpoint works. Oh, that's how. Those are the things that hit me. So it's kind of like
Right.
wow, it's very very weird. And
It's a
then
eureka moment, no? It's a
yeah,
eureka moment.
yeah,
And
and
it
it's
really happens.
yeah. And for me personally, I didn't really think of it that way, and I do not know why. I don't know if I cannot consider myself special nonetheless, because during those times I remember how hard my teacher was teaching the concepts, because I do agree, the form of teaching, because my teacher, I love him very dearly, but he teaches very systematically, which I am also going to target in my third point, which is education. Education, the way he teaches is so systematic that I think it's like it goes back to the learning, the upbringing, that how he learned it. That's what he's teaching, which is sometimes
Right.
what I want. I hope for me, for a personal learner, for them to update the certain curriculum or certain way of making the
Yeah.
students understand. I'm not contradicting education
That's
in
right.
any way. I am for
Uh-huh.
education. I mean, I'm for learning. Actually, I'm not for education, because the way I see the word education is, it is learning with payment. And for me, I just want learning, not the payment. That's why every time I disregard the word education.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So,
But yeah, but
yeah,
I completely agree. I completely agree with you. I mean, I what you call it? I for one, I'm experiencing that same thought now that I'm homeschooling my kids. So you know, being there 24 hours a day, you cannot just give them all the worksheets that you can give them.
yeah, yeah,
It's really not gonna work.
yeah,
And doing everyday stuff, it can all be part of their learning. So
yeah,
the mindset the mindset of education should not be only covered in books
yeah, yeah,
or or yeah. So I agree with you. I completely agree with you. That's why I am so amazed with educators that give their time uh, for the students. There
yeah,
sometimes I would really see how a teacher would prepare
yeah,
for just a certain subject, but
yeah.
and
You
and
know,
the
and
effort that
the
that
funny part
yeah.
of the funny part about that is, I'm sure when you were in high school and in college, or even in the lower class, you would know the difference
Uh-huh.
between an actual teacher and a teacher. I don't know if you know what I mean by this, but I hope you understood what I mean by this.
Uh-huh.
Like, you,
Well, in
there's
a
a
way, yeah.
difference.
Well, in a
There's a
way,
very
yeah, I can
vast
relate.
difference, because I've met
Uh-huh.
teachers who are just teaching for the sake of teaching, and there are those
Right,
teachers that,
right.
you just sit down and go, whoa,
Oh
I
yeah,
just sat down,
oh yeah,
and where was I transported to? Because I want to share
yeah,
this
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah.
I
Oh
had
yeah.
a I had a teacher who I had a class which happened to be 7 to 8, which is an evening class, and this I think 7 to 8 or 6 to 7 class, and it was really interesting because the first time it was my second take of this particular GE subject. The first time the teacher taught me, the first teacher who taught me the GE subject, taught me the taught it somewhat systematically. So somehow I do not know. It's not. I like the teacher. The teacher was kind, sweet, loving. Even added me on Facebook, but uh, somehow the learning didn't work somehow in that conversation, in that
I get it. Yeah.
transaction. But then the next teacher who taught the same subject, this was, mind you, in the evenings, like when the sun said goodbye to you and everybody is tired, everybody just wants to sleep. I am there absorbing his teaching method in such a way that I still have the energy to go home and say, wow, what did I
Mm-hmm.
just experience? And there's a difference between a teacher and an actual teacher, which blows my mind. So yeah,
Yeah.
those are like a
That's
dime in a dozen too. So yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'm still experiencing that right now, especially right now when I'm not actually in school. And I've met many musicians, and I've met musicians that are called senior musicians, those that have been there and done that.
Yeah.
And you can tell by the exchanges, by the conversations, who is, just a natural sharer of, their experiences, and you can learn a lot by these
Yeah.
experiences. And I think that's what's the important thing is. I have some well, I'm glad most of my teachers in college and high school, some of them are really really good teachers. Like I remember my English teacher in high school.
Yeah.
He well, in class we were always like about, right, maybe 40 or 50 in class.
Yeah.
And when you learn in a school, you are required to buy these books, etc., etc. And you know
Yeah.
what he did, because I think he knew that most of the students didn't really know grammar really well, and we were into going deep into grammar. So
Yeah.
you know what he did, he really disregarded the curriculum and went into the important ones, just to for us to remember what they are, what are the grammar rules. Those are simple things, but I knew what he wanted to do. It was not doing it by the book. It's really knowing what the student needs from him. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that for me is a great system. And in college, oh, my history teacher, uh she's really one of the best, because me, when I learned back in high school and college, I would really try to take down as many notes as I can, right?
Yeah.
Or at least follow the whatever material they gave me to the letter. And then she comes around, um doing the history. I didn't really love um going through the history classes in high school, because of course you have to memorize a lot of stuff, a lot of dates, you have to read, etc., etc., right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I went to her class, this was a music history class.
Yeah.
She didn't have any books for us to read. She was a storyteller. You were supposed to just try to remember it like she was just telling a story. And I imagined it in my head. He was really visual
Yeah.
about it, and I learned a lot with that history class that I can still remember right now. I mean, I can tell you, I wouldn't be able to remember the dates per se, but I would know the timeline. I would know the stories behind it, because she told us the stories behind it in such a way that it was like she was there, It was so
Interesting.
funny, because she was really old, but still she wouldn't live on that era even though. But
Yeah.
those are the kind of teachers that that really click, and that would give us the right sense of learning as it is. And I hope that when I'm in a class, I hope I give that experience as well. So sometimes I get to, sometimes when we have band workshops or such, sometimes I would remind myself not to be too I don't know, like serious or teacher mode enough, something like that,
Yeah.
because sometimes I'd like to dwell on on the subject matter, because there's really a lot to learn about music, and I get immersed on it myself, and it's quite enjoyable too. So I hope I hope that, because it's different. Okay, so there's a main difference of being a musician. There's the teaching side of it and the performing side of it, and both are tools for the listeners to learn, right? So
Yeah.
and I do hope I get to reach uh the message that I want to give out in those two tools, and either learning it by teaching it, and learning it by listening to it. So
Yeah.
yeah, because it's two different realms altogether, and not one musician can do both at the same time,
Yeah.
uh in the same level. Do you get it? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
one can be good at performing but not be good at teaching,
Yeah.
and vice versa. Okay, and very few can have that state, that he or she is great in performing as well as great
Teaching.
in teaching.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I guess that's the end goal in my life. I I still feel that I like to learn some
Yeah.
more, and be able to reach out to people, to understand music as how I understood it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And more power to you, actually, for the stuff.
Thank you.
I mean, yeah. We were supposed to talk about work ethic and thing, but we went off to another route. Eventually, we'll talk about that probably in another season. I hope uh,
Sure.
you're gonna come back to
Of
the Rajiv
course
show,
I
and we're
will.
gonna talk about that. And
Anytime.
Fuseboxx and Human Folk. These two. The reason why I jotted this down in a notepad in front of me right now is that what was the uh, what was going on when you guys came up with this name? I'm actually looking at it.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah. I'm just so curious
Okay.
what
All right.
made you
Okay.
guys choose those names like Human Folk. Human Folk is a
Okay.
really
Okay.
interesting name, by the way. So yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's start with Fuseboxx, because that's the main band that I had. We were formed 2001. So our band leader, it's Eric too, but he was the one who formed the group. I wasn't there in the first batch of the band members. I came in a few months afterwards. And then we were supposed to, if I remember correctly, we were supposed to have a gig. We were supposed to have a gig in our first gig.
Yeah.
Okay, and then they, yeah, and they wanted to they wanted the name for the band, and we haven't thought of any yet. And I think our bassist suggested uh having one of the login names. I think Fuseboxx was one of the login names that
Interesting.
our band leader used before. Yeah, so it was just like that, for some reason it became a household name. Actually,
Yeah.
we had one more candidate for the name. We
Yeah.
wanted to call our band. Yeah, I think we called our band at some point Switch,
Interesting.
SWITH. But it, yeah, but it turned out to be the title of our first composition. So
Wow.
yeah, so
Powerful.
there's a
Powerful.
thought.
Powerful.
Okay, now with Human Folk, I wasn't there as well in the first batch of musicians, because Johnny was the one who formed this with Cynthia Alexander and Susie,
Yeah.
the kulintang artist. Um, and I guess he came up with, if I remember correctly, he came up with the name because of the collaborative effort,
Yeah.
and he wanted to really get immersed with the musical styles, with both the ethnic style and his own style in music. And that's why, because human folk is a very, very in a general sense, of community, of getting together, of uh and that's how music should be, right?
Yeah.
It it's the one that
Brings
gives,
people.
like in the olden days. Yes, it's a tool for everything. It's a tool for celebration. It's a tool for, if you have something that you should talk about, discussion, stories.
Yeah.
It's like that. It's for the So I guess that's the idea of the
Human folk.
name that came around. Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's phenomenal. It's actually very intellectual. If you think about it, it's like, oh, this is thing, this is something else, you know. And shout out, by the way, to all the musicians that my guests mentioned. I hope they tune in as well. Thank you for tuning in.
Of course.
And yeah, of course, wow, we've jammed, we've grooved a lot in this conversation. It's funny and
Oh
ironic that
yeah.
we've had a lot of parallels. Like if this was
Mm-hmm.
a band, you were playing the bass and I was playing the drums, and we just locked in the groove for almost thing. And it's funny that I wanted to mention that usually I have like a background music on my monitor, supposedly. But in this
Oh really?
conversation,
Okay.
yeah, usually in a conversation, I usually have that. But here in this conversation, once I heard your voice, somehow I didn't really need to have that background music thing. And I do not, and that's how powerful you are in this conversation. And that's why I
Thank
gave you that
you.
grand opening entry where you had to react before I was even introducing you. But yeah, that's how Rajiv does it. He makes people smile, and that's yeah, that's my gift, I guess, to the world.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rajiv, for having me. And I'm sure we still have a lot of stories to tell, both you and
Absolutely.
I, a lot of stories to share to our listeners. So I'm pretty sure there's going to be a part two of this, or part three. Part
Sure.
three.
Hopefully, if
So, yeah,
if
let's
if
see.
we could
Hopefully
resort,
next season, right?
yeah. Hopefully. I'm just saying hopefully. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And of
Hopefully.
course, for those who
Yeah.
are tuning in, they would love to connect with you online. How would they find you on social media? By the way,
Oh, okay.
before I forget.
Well, I'm all right. So I'm active on almost all social media pages. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. You can also find me on TikTok, but you wouldn't find me dancing there. Just music stuff. And so it's Abby Clutario, ABBY Clutario, CLUTARIO. I'm gonna give Rajiv my handle names for all of my social media pages, but there you go. You can search for me. I usually put my face on, so you can easily identify me and my instrument, the Chapman stick. So there, I hope to see you there on my channels too. Thank you, Raj.
The Chapman stick is something you're going to be known for, and I believe you're going to take it to another level. I mean, you've already took it to a
I hope
certain
so.
standard already, but I'm sure you're going to take it higher. And yeah, I believe in you. I always do. And I always love seeing your live
Thank you.
streams. Folks, follow her,
Thank
guys.
you. Thank
If
you.
you're not following her, there's something wrong with you guys. Go follow her. Go listen to her music. She is the best. Like I said, Chapman Stick. Research that and go check out the blog that I sent out. I think there. I'll put in a Wikipedia page of what a Chapman Stick is, so that it'll give a brief description.
Okay.
And yeah,
Yeah, and hopefully you guys can hopefully by around this time I could have, I could have released more music on Spotify. I'm on Spotify as well.
Yeah.
I released three singles since last year. The first one is dedicated to the pandemic. It's called Stay at Home. The
Yeah.
second one is my first instrumental release, Dreaming of Tomorrow. It's a chap and stick instrumental track. So if you're
Phenomenal.
wondering what the chap and stick sounds like, so you can go check that out. And right now, I'm still promoting my latest single, Take Me. It's a groovy rock song, so you
Yeah.
can go check that out as well. So there,
Yeah.
hopefully, by the time you hear this podcast, I would have released new songs for you to enjoy. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. And I want to say thank you to my guest for first saying yes to me for this collaboration. I know it's been a long time
You're
since
very
I've
welcome.
spoken to
Yes.
my guest, and yeah, this has been fun. Like I said, I can't wait to
Thank
have her on my
you.
live show and probably some music. That's good. It's gonna be fun. I'm already excited. I didn't even think of anything, but I'm already excited. With that in mind,
We'll think of something.
yeah, yeah. Let's come up with something. I'm sending my love to my guest, and because it's a Christmas spirit. We're in the Christmas spirit. I'm sending my love, warm hugs, virtual love to you, and hopefully see you soon once this pandemic dies down. Hopefully see you soon. Uh, Taking the bar to the highest level, and whenever I walk with you to wherever, or just gonna have a grab a coffee in Baguio, saying, "Hey, that's the Chapman stick girl." Yeah, and that's the
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I want to say thank you again so much from the bottom of my heart. Virtual love, virtual
Thank
hugs.
you, Rajiv.
Yeah,
More power to your show, Rajiv. Yes.
thank you so
Thank you,
much.
everyone. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. And with that in mind, cheers, folks. I will see you in the next episode.